play.
Well, welcome to the Lazy Kitchen. Today we're going to do meatloaf. And meatloaf is one of those all-American dinners that often speaks of comfort food to people. And we're going to put our own twist on it by making a healthy and a quick version of it. The Lazy Kitchen has 3 rules. Rule number 1 is lazy, so prep time is 10 minutes or less. We're going to be holding ourselves accountable with a timer. No cutting, no cleaning, so we want that to be accessible to people who don't like to cook, don't know how to cook, don't have time to cook, but they still want to put a budget-friendly, nutritious meal on their table. Rule number 2 is thrifty. We want to make a meal that's as affordable as possible while still keeping a good nutritional value. I will tell you where I source my food and how much they cost for this particular meal. And the idea is that you should be able to get those ingredients from most of your local sources as well. Sometimes not all from the same store, but within a few stores that are close to you as well. And rule number 3, and probably the most important one, we want the meals to be healthy. We're going to use unprocessed foods or minimally processed foods sometimes in our condiments. And for our purposes, I'm going to define a healthy balanced meal as a meal that has a complete protein, that has a healthy source of carbohydrates. Incidentally, I have celiac, so all my meals are going to be gluten-free. A lot of them are also naturally dairy-free, or if they have dairy, you can easily substitute non-dairy sources, so it's very allergen-friendly. And we're going to put at least 2 vegetables, and vegetables is often one of the hardest things for people to incorporate, so we're going to try to incorporate not only the right quantity of vegetables in our meals, but also a diversity of vegetables because they all have a slightly different nutritional profile. So let's look at what we're going to use for our meal today. And if I have a few minutes at the end of the meal, I'll tell you a funny story about my first encounter with meatloaf. So the cooking instruments we're going to need, we're going to use a baking dish. You can pick one that's a little flat or a little thicker depending on how you want your meatloaf to look like. And the only other thing we're going to need today is a mixing bowl. I have a clear one so you can see what I'm doing. As far as the ingredients, our protein is going to be ground meat. This is ground beef. You can use things like ground chicken or ground turkey as well if you prefer to stick with a white meat. This one came from the freezer. It's ground beef chuck. It was about $3.50. I think it was on sale, which is why it was in the freezer. I bought it at some point. The carbohydrate today is going to be oats. And oats is one of those forgotten healthy carbohydrates. We do a lot of food allergy testing at the office, and we find out that's one of the grains that people are least allergic to, so it's a good idea to incorporate that instead of wheat. What I did is I used 1 cup of regular rolled oats, and I added about another half a cup to a full cup of water. And you need to soak your oats by adding a little bit of something acidic. I just put a little bit of the apple cider vinegar that I have with my condiments. You need to soak them about 4 hours. So if you're going to cook your meatloaf, let's say in the morning, you want to soak it up the night before. If you're going to cook it in the evening when you get home, you want to soak it in the morning. The cost of the oatmeal is ridiculously low. You can get a half a cup for about 50 cents. We're going to use an egg as a binder. That's probably another 50 cents, even for a top quality egg. So between those two, that's about $1. As far as the vegetables, we're going to use pre-cut plain chopped onions. These came from the frozen food section. It looks like probably Walmart. We're going to use about a half a cup. A whole bag is about $1.20, so if you use half of that, that's about 60 cents. Nothing added, just onions. We're going to use riced cauliflower as a vegetable. The bag, we're probably going to be using almost the whole bag for about a cup and a half. And that costs about $2 or less. It's very readily available at just about any store right now because a lot of people are using cauliflower who are on low carbohydrate diet. It's a nice cruciferous vegetable. It doesn't have a lot of flavor, so you know you can hide that in recipes, and people don't really feel like you're forcing them to eat their vegetables. And then for a little color in the second vegetables, we're going to use green peas, probably $1 or so at a store, at any store. Those we're going to mix them last so that they don't turn into a green mushy paste because they're pretty delicate. On the condiment end of things, we're going to need just a little bit of a good clean quality oil to put in our baking pan. I just happen to have olive oil. You could use good organic avocado oil, coconut oil, butter if you wanted to grease your pan. Salt to taste. I have a little bit of dehydrated garlic, if you like that. A lot of people traditionally put ketchup in their meatloaf. I'm more of a savory person, so I don't use it a lot. Just be aware, ketchup tends to have a lot of sugar. If you like the tomato flavor, you may want to substitute things like tomato paste. I like mustard, so I'm going to put a little bit of my good old German mustard with it. Then again, it's optional. Meatloaf is one of those things you can, once you have the basic recipe, you can season it however you want or however your family wants. We're not going to need a lot of liquids with this recipe because the oats being soaked will bring some of the liquid. If you like your meatloaf a little more like mushy or tender, you can add some liquid. You can use milk. I have some of my oat milk on hand. Any sort of liquid. You can even use broth. So first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to start my oven for 350. Being I'm going to mix everything by hand in this bowl and then transfer it, I recommend you wash your hands before you start. I already did that, and even if you forget at 350, things are pretty forgiving. So let's bring things down so we can see the timer, and let's get rolling. I'm going to do everything, mix everything by hand, so make sure you've got your hands washed like I did. So I am going to start by adding our ground meat in there. I am going to add the oats, and I'm going to keep the measuring bowl to measure out my cauliflower rice, and I'm going to try to do a good cup and a half of the cauliflower. I want to have about 2 cups of those vegetables, so you know, onions go a long way. I'm going to try to not put too much more than half a cup. Well, we're going to be generous. And then if your frozen vegetables are pretty wet, what you may want to do is drain them a little bit. In recipes, if you were to do a soup or stew, the amount of liquid you add is probably not really crucial, but on something like the meatloaf, it could make it a little more soggy if you didn't drain them. So we're going to top it up. A little bit more. Onions are healthy for you, so right now I've got 2 cups of the mix of the two. Add that in. I'm going to crack my egg. Very good. I'm going to add a little bit of my salt. I like nice coarse salt. I am going to add my mustard and a spoon. So just plain old good German mustard. I'm going to maybe add, let's be generous with that and add 2 teaspoons. And just for kicks, I'm going to add a little bit of pepper today. So now I have, at this point, if you were to be someone who really likes the ketchup, you would add it now and mix it. I'm going to make a nice big mash. And if anybody wants to see up close what I'm doing, the videographer is going to bring the camera. So there's one big giant mash here. And what you're going to do is, when things are pretty well mixed in, it doesn't look very pretty. But when things are pretty well mixed in, we're going to add the green peas, and we're going to try to keep them as intact as we can so they don't feel like pea soup. Very good. Thank God for kitchen rags. Let's see, there's a lot of water. I'm gonna do the same thing with the peas. Oh, I guess I'm glad I took it out. There's a lot of water in those peas. Good. And we're gonna add a nice cup of peas in there. Color. It's the kind of vegetable hopefully we've learned to like over the years. And we're gonna gently mix the peas with all of that. Very good. If you don't like peas, by the way, and if you want to add an extra vegetable that's got some nice color, you can buy some fresh shredded carrot in most stores, and so you would use a cup of shredded carrots instead, depending on who likes what in your household. And I would say that I really don't need to add any oatmeal. My meatloaf batter feels nice and moist. And so all that's left to do is a little bit of olive oil. We want to make sure that the pan is well coated so that when we go to cut up the meatloaf, it doesn't stick to the bottom and make a mess. Those lazy cooks do not like to clean a mess. Good. Now, without making too much of a splash, we're going to pour our meatloaf right in there. And because I'm lazy, I'm definitely not going to wash my dish by hand. Everything is going to go in my dishwasher. Voila. So we are 5 minutes and 20 seconds into the meatloaf. I would add a minute to that for the fact that this morning I had to grab these things out of the freezer and put them on the counter, and I had to pour some oats into my measuring cup and add about a tablespoon or so of vinegar and the water to top it off. You're going to put in the oven for about 50 minutes. I have the oven on 350. It really actually depends on your oven. If you have a gas or an electric oven, it will cook a little bit differently. You check into it. It may be a good idea if you're around for the last 10 minutes that you remove the aluminum foil, because there will be a little bit of a moisture pooling on top, and so it will crisp it. If you're one of those people who likes the ketchup, that's a really good time to put a little ketchup and let it kind of brown and crust on there for those of you who like that. I'm probably going to put a little salsa on mine. Voila! So 6 minutes and 20 seconds. I still have 3 minutes to throw these things back in the freezer, throw the rest in the dishwasher, a few things in the garbage, and I'm off on my way. If you are not quite ready to put the meatloaf in the oven at the time you cooked it, you can put it in the fridge until you need it. You can leave it during the day if you made it in the morning, and just take it out when you get home, assuming you have about 15 minutes to cook before you have to eat. So here's the beast. I'm going to take it out in the oven where it's been resting, awaiting its fate. And I got the oven on 350, well, almost 350. Yeah, it's getting there, and I'm going to put it in. Very good. And I'm going to set the timer for, actually for 50 minutes, but really 40 minutes. I'm going to come back, take out the aluminum foil to get it nice and browned on the top for the last 10 minutes.